Ta-da! Look at that. Wow, I forgot to hit live. That's freaking hilarious. AJ, I'm going to bring you right on here because I've already messed up this entire show. Ta-da! Look at that. Hey, how are you? Um,
I'm
everybody,
great. How are you?
I'm great. We've been sitting here chatting for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I even hit so the way this normally works is there's like music that plays in the background and a countdown that goes down. Now me and you when we're sitting here in vmix we can't hear or see that, but that's what goes down and it counts down to my live Talk to the Beard show on Facebook, right? That's how it normally works. There's one button that I have to hit to make that happen, and I didn't hit it. So we just went live. So nobody got the countdown like normal. And normally I do like a big intro and I talk to the crowd and everything else. And yeah, I fucked that all up. So that's all right.
Can you see how many people are on?
There's only 4,000 right now, so it's not that big crowd. I'm just joking with you. There's 12. We typically, it's interesting the way this works with the crowd, right? So we have 1,300 people in the group, right? And in the group, we typically get in between 10 to 30 people watching these live, but we leave them posted in the group. After that, over the course of the next week, we get about 200 to 300 views somewhere in there. Just depends on the week. And then we send it over to YouTube. And YouTube is starting out slow. I'm not trying to grow the YouTube channel per se. I'm not putting a lot of effort into it. I'm just posting up the videos and letting it do its own thing. And typically these will get another 50 views or so on YouTube, something like that. Sometimes 100, it just depends. It's it's a weird thing. I don't like to promote shit. You understand? I don't like to go buy my stuff or go download, go watch. I don't really care to do that. What I do is I just put it out there, and then if people want to watch it, they can, and if they don't, they don't. And that's always worked for us. It continues to grow, so that's how we work it.
I think it's really cool.
It's fun. It keeps me occupied and it keeps me out of trouble. Yeah. So everybody, this is AJ. Somebody asked me to introduce my guest. I'm pretty sure they all know who you are. I was astounded. Okay, when we met in 2019 at Jero, we met, and there's these whisperings in the background of she's written 300 books. She's written. I got to looking at this the other day, and I've done the math. Now I'm not very good at math. When you break it down, given your relatively spry young age, you've had to have written a book every 52 minutes for most of your life. How does that work?
Um, oh, no wonder I'm tired. Well, when I started out in 2008, I sold my first book, Phantom Lover, in 2007 to Ecstasy Books, and I was thrilled that it was a bestseller for Ecstasy and for me. But the publisher said to me, you should do it as a series. That's what sells. And before I knew it, I had a two-book a month commitment with her. Two books a
A
month. I was
month?
doing that, yes, for years. And I had to kind of slow down because I wanted to work with other publishers and also start self publishing. But it was honestly keeping me chained to the desk. And
Ye-
I really enjoy what I do. I love what I do. You were saying before, it isn't the toughest job I've ever had. I know recording and narrating books is not the toughest job you've had, but I take it very seriously and I put a lot of work into it. So I've slowed down in the last few years. When I say that, I'm writing maybe six or seven a year as opposed to 24 to 30. That's still a lot of books.
that's a shit ton of that. I believe that's. I don't mean to be crass, but that's a shit ton of books. That's amazing. You said that we were having this conversation about me loving what I do and you really enjoying what you do. What got you into this particular genre? How did you fall into this and why do you like that so much?
I was trying to sell a, I was a journalist and I wrote a murder mystery. I was trying to get an agent, trying to get a publisher, and I entered a writing contest in 2007. And the first prize was a critique from uh, J.K. Rowling's agent. And he wrote a critique that was very nice, but he said, "You're never going to get this book published. The character is a forensic accountant, which is great because nobody else has a mystery with a forensic accountant. But, the publishing industry is dying and they're not going to take a chance on you. But while you're still waiting for your ship to come in," he really used that expression. He said, "I think you should write erotic romance. Your writing really lends itself to erotic romance." And I've been reading romance novels since I was a little girl growing up in Australia, but I didn't know what erotic romance was, and I Googled it and I thought, oh, okay. So it's explicit sex in a romantic setting. And I bought a couple of ebooks. I'd never bought one before, read them, and I wrote Phantom Lover in a few days, and it was a full length novel. But I wrote it, I don't know, it just sort of came out of nowhere, and I sent it to Ecstasy Books. She was the first erotic romance publisher that came up online. And I took the dog out for a walk, came back, and there was a contract in my inbox. Up until then, I was getting either rejections or nothing, no response. And she said to me, "I love this." And she said, but it was a straight romance. She said, "I really like your writing, but I'm going to contract it, but it's not going to sell because what is huge right now is gay." I said, "Oh, two women? I could do that." No, no, she said, "Two men." And somehow it clicked for me. I've always said, I think I was a man in my past life because I think like a guy, and I was very comfortable writing gay sex. In fact, I was very uncomfortable writing girly bits. I still am. And it was very organic for me to do this, and I still love it. So
That's
that's how
am-
it started.
that's amazing that
And
you go ahead. Go ahead.
I know, and I turned the book I'd written about the forensic accountant, I made her into a gay man, and I called him Mingo McLeod, and that's the series you're narrating. That's probably my biggest series.
I find it fascinating, a couple things, and I have questions. Okay, so first off, within minutes, so you finish writing the book, you send it off, you go to walk the dog, you come back and you have a contract. That is unheard of, and I've talked to a lot of
Unheard of.
authors. Yeah, that's amazing to me.
Well, she wanted the first three chapters or the first 50 pages, whatever came first. And I sent her the first three chapters, and she wanted the rest of it, and I panicked because I thought, oh, what if it's no good? I was so used to rejection.
Mm.
And I went through it and I thought, no, it's good. It didn't have much sex in it. But when she said make it gay, it totally transformed the story. And I think anyone who's read my books will tell you the first 100 or so books I wrote, there was a ton of sex. And I've really slowed that down because the market's changed. And frankly, I've run out of positions, with so many books.
That's what
And
Patty says too. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Well, I get this, but 2008. Now, I've been narrating since 2012, roughly, full time, doing nothing else since 2015. They don't let me out of that room very much. But 2008, from my understanding, and DSP, Dreamspinner Press, was one of the largest romance publishers for a long time. And I don't think they started hitting until 2010 or 2012. In 2008, for an agency to say to you, this is what's hot right now, that seems to me that it was on the very cutting edge of really all of us hitting big.
It's absolutely true. It was
Yeah.
a publisher, Ecstasy Books. I'm still with her all these years later, but she primarily published books and still does. She has a lot of male female books too, but John, I always say I go back to the age of the dinosaur in publishing because there was literally a handful of us. It was me, DJ Manley. DJ and I partnered up on many, many books. We've had about 80 books published together. Really, there was really a small handful. And of those people, most of them are still around. But, a lot of people fell away as it got bigger. And there are so many authors out there now, I can't keep up with them.
Mhm. Yeah. In goodness gracious, I think that it is now keeping up. I don't know if that would be the word, and I don't have the statistic on it, but giving a run for its money, the MF romance market from where I'm sitting, and that's a new development. Now, you are still not doing the indie publishing thing, or is it you're
No, I
doing it
am.
some? Okay, so you are.
No, I am. I guess I'm considered a hybrid author because I do both. I only have two publishers now, Ecstasy Books and Totally Bound, whereas at one point I had 10.
Okay.
But as books have reverted to me, the rights have reverted, I self-publish. I haven't given Totally Bound a new book for a long time, but I give Ecstasy a few books a year. I feel very loyal to her because that's where I started. And MF is big. It always was, but MM overshadowed it for a long time. But, I honestly had a lot of bad experiences with many publishers. So many of them never paid us.
Hmm.
I've had to just fight one company that went under. They had 17 books of mine, which was a lot of material. So I
Hmm.
just got those back. But, unfortunately, the internet is like the wild, wild west. And years ago, I signed with Silver Publishing, and he said he was in South Africa, but in fact, he was in Detroit. And I turned detective on him. And when we went to the US Marshals and different law enforcement agencies to try and get them to help us, they said, you're on your own. When you're dealing with the internet, you have to be careful. And with a lot of these publishing companies to this day, when they go under, their email addresses disappear, their phone numbers disappear. Most of the personnel are publishing or editing or doing covers or whatever under fake names, and they're gone.
Hmm.
So I'm much more protective of my work now, and I'm self-publishing more. I make more self-publishing than with my publishers.
It's such an amazing story.
But it took a long time to get there.
Well, sure. And having, just as it's the wild, wild west in the industry, going in and trying to find a publisher who's going to be honest with you, that sort of thing. Somebody preferably that you know is not going to disappear like that. Dealing in the indie market as well is absolutely the wild, wild west of putting your information, your love, your work out there to the world, and hey, who's going to buy it? Go. I've watched this play out in several ways, and I can only speak for the way my own work has happened. And I don't know how you authors make what you do go. I don't, you actually create from complete scratch. I take somebody else's work and give an interpretation of it. A writer is sitting down at the table and I have nothing. Hey, now I have something. It's an amazing thing that you do. But, I know for me, when I hit go and typically ACX is my distributor, I will hit go. I have no idea who even knows about this book, let alone who's going to buy it or not. In the first, I would say 3 years of my career, I did a lot of royalty share, where if people didn't buy it, I wasn't getting paid. Just that simple. You live in that world a lot as a writer in self-pubbing. When you hit go, it could only sell 3 copies. You just put in God knows how many hours worth of work, and it could only sell 3. You could only make 5 cents on this thing.
It's happened.
Oh yeah, me too. A number of times. But then when one suddenly takes, and people that don't share your last name are buying it, and
Yeah.
commenting on it, and there's a buzz going around. We were talking a bit about this before we came on the air about, like, I worked in a bubble and I didn't know that people even knew who I was. You've been at this for a while. When did you first? What was it? Just the paychecks that came in? How did you know? Oh my God, I'm a famous romance author.
To be really honest, I was initially writing as a man. I used AJ Llewellyn because I was advised to write as a man, and I was very comfortable being a male persona. It was difficult in that I was invited to the very first GRL before it became this big thing. It was at Carol Lynn's home, and it was only a handful of authors and a bunch of readers, and I couldn't go because I'm a woman. And I kept thinking, I hadn't thought about this when I started out, that I would actually become within my genre, quite well known. But as I worked with DJ, she was writing as a man as well, and then I started writing with other people, and I was outed in 2011 in a very, very nasty way. And it was not until that happened that I realized, oh, people not only know who I am, but they now hate me. And it took a while to overcome that because there are so many people who are females still writing as men, but there are many more men writing as women. And I don't think it matters what sex you are, what nationality you are. If you can write, you can write. And to be honest, at the time, there was an actor who emailed me. He reached out to me. I'd never met him. And he said to me, I just want you to remember one thing. This is bullying. And he said, if you couldn't write, this wouldn't be happening to you. And I really listened to that because I was very depressed and I really thought I wouldn't be able to write anymore. And sometimes I still come across people who say, well, you wrote as a man. Well, yes, so what? Lots of people are still doing it, but if that's what they are comfortable doing, AJ Llewellyn's not my real name. It's a nom de plume, but I'm very comfortable being AJ. I love being AJ, and I love what I do. And I think that it was very liberating, even though I didn't like the way it happened, being outed as a woman, because now I can go to GRL. That was the first one I went to where I met you. And I can go to writer conferences. But I feel honestly it's always been this way, particularly in the MF market, which was always the strong market. A lot of bitchiness and a lot of jealousy. And it's still there. I just don't choose to partake in it. I don't talk about people. I don't bitch about them. I just keep my head down. I love interacting with other authors and readers, but I know what happened to me and I wouldn't do that to somebody else. So I feel very lucky to still be here.
This is I am grateful that you came on the show. I'm also grateful that I got to meet you in 2019, and I'm grateful I get to work on some of your stuff. I only say that
Thank you.
because we've seen this. I talk about the community a lot, the MM romance community. The community itself is the reason that I've stayed in this. I'm a straight white man. I'm the exact opposite of what you would think would be in this particular industry, but I am because of the community. There are acting decisions which make it easier for me. I don't have to do dual narrations nearly as often because I can voice all the male characters, the main male characters in a book. That makes perfect sense to me. But at the end of the day, it's the community. And we were discussing my Facebook group before we came on the air and kind of how that grew organically. And I just kind of fell in love with the community. I've also seen the witch hunt side of this community as well. And you'll see it on occasion. I'm sure that you have more experience with this than me, and just based on directly your story there, of you'll see a couple sparks of it on Facebook. You'll see I'm not going to call anybody out. That's how it always starts. But and then they'll go into this rant about how somebody in the community did something wrong, and these people are now holier than thou pointing out the wrongdoing that has happened. I call them witch hunts, and we've seen this. I've been actively participating in the social media community for about 4 years, and I've seen more than a handful of them where the community just, they're like ravenous dogs. It's like, rah, 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 and then they just go after this one person, and then the people start to pick sides. And if you don't post out on your own social media, I condemn this sort of thing, then apparently you're on it's the cancel culture is what it fucking is. It's the cancel culture. I don't participate in any of that shit. I'm a 44-year-old dude. I don't care. I just don't. I just don't.
No, and it's good not to because people don't forget. And it still goes on a lot, but to me, there are worse crimes than writing under a pseudonym. And we have a huge problem, which you sort of brought up about. Writers start with page one and we create things. There is a huge problem with piracy. which is really eaten into my income, everyone's income, but also plagiarism. It's rampant, and it's very hard to police, but thankfully it has happened to me, and I kept it very quiet because I didn't want people going out and buying the other person's work and giving them money. But I was very lucky that Amazon took the books down immediately, but they didn't even change. They changed the character names, but not the story. But the funniest one to me was a woman, I'm not going to name her, but she was an author who had gone after me for writing as a man and all this stuff. But she went out and plagiarized an MF story, and it was a very famous case. She forgot that the character gives birth in the story and kept all that in there. And people were wondering, that's interesting. How did this guy give birth? And then when the people started pointing out the theft, she said, "Oh, I didn't write it. My mother did." Threw her mother under the bus.
You can't make that up.
Yeah. But I did think it was funny that she forgot about the birth sequences, and that's how she decided to excuse it. And she doesn't write anymore because I've checked. She might write under another name, but she was a big author. And it does happen sometimes where you think, I have writer's block. It hasn't happened a lot to me, but it happened during COVID where I couldn't write. And thank God that's over. But I just don't write. I don't go and get somebody else's book and think, here, let me rip this off. I just wouldn't do it. But that's me.
Yeah, the pirate thing happens in the audiobook community a lot. At any given time, you can go look on YouTube and find a shit ton of my books out there that people have reposted, and other people as well. Yours are probably up there. Not ones that I've done because I haven't posted them up yet, not on YouTube, but on ACX. But you get what I'm saying. The piracy is out there. At first, I had this weird reaction of, they like me enough to take my... Wow. Yeah. They like me. I had that because I am just egotistical. But I came to the conclusion, at least with that. Now, this is not the same. This is apples to oranges. But I came to the conclusion that those people were not going to pay for my book. They just weren't. It wasn't like
it's true.
Yeah. So, in essence, they're kind of doing me a favor. They're getting it out there. And the people that are going to actually pay for the book will end up going to pay for the book, most likely. It kind of evens itself out in the wash. That being said, I spent a lot of time early on tracking down those people. And we were talking about the wild, wild west of the internet earlier. At least with YouTube, what'll happen is YouTube will pull that shit down. It's awesome, right? And then like a week later...
eBay does as well.
Yeah.
It's back again.
Yeah, they pop up under just a different account, a different name. There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. It's like whack-a-mole. Yeah. You just keep on going.
Well, yeah, exactly. But, when piracy first happened to me, I saw such a significant drop in income. It was like, I can't afford to keep doing this. And really, we lost a lot of really good authors who just stopped.
Wow.
And part of the reason I've stayed with Totally Bound, the British company, even though I haven't given them anything new for a long time, was they were the first and only publishing house that went after pirates. And there was a company called Astortalk, which was an underground pirate community, and they were very proud of being thieves. But there was one person who kept uploading books the night they'd be published, because most publishers publish at midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific. And so 10 seconds after my book's published, there it is on Astortalk. The publisher... I'm not telling tales out of school. She was very public about this. Her husband worked for MI5, and he coded each and every one of their books with special coding when people purchased them. So they figured out who this woman was. She was a 19-year-old girl living in New Jersey in her parents' basement, and she was purchasing one copy of each book as they came out each week. She'd uploaded something like 30,000 books.
Wow.
And they sent her a letter by mail saying you have 7 days to take down all your links or we're taking you to court.
Mm.
And she went on Astrotalk, and I was reading her comments in the forum. She said, "All my hard work down the drain." I thought, your hard work? We're the ones that wrote these books, and they're the ones that did the covers and
Oh
the
my
edits.
God.
And she did take them all down, but it actually killed Astrotalk because she was their most prolific uploader, and the others became very frightened about uploading. But these days, if you contact a pirate site, they just block you. So
Mm.
I used to lose sleep. I don't anymore.
Hmm.
To be really honest, if my books are pirated, it's an idea. It's an indication they've done well because otherwise they wouldn't be finding them.
Precisely. And the
I
losing
don't like
sleep.
it, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, who does?
Those days ago, yeah.
Yeah, the losing sleep thing is the most important thing to me because at the end of the day, um, I'm probably going beyond our point here, but at the end of the day, AJ, I started this 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, looking for a career. And if this ends because people are pirating my shit, I'll figure out how to do something else. But
I
I'll be
don't think it's
happy.
going to end for you. It
Maybe
won't
not.
end for you.
Well, and you too, 300 freaking, that's amazing to me. Do you, I know authors, a great example of somebody that I've seen do this, be this prolific is Andrew Gray. He's a good friend of mine. He's been
He's a
incredibly,
good friend of mine too, and he's been really an inspiration to me. He's a really good person
yeah,
and a
and
great
he,
writer.
well, and he also has one hell of a personality. And I'll tell you what, he snores like a bitch. I've never seen any. Anyways, that's
Oh,
the
so you
running.
shared a room at a
Yeah,
conference?
yeah. He's the only gay man I ever slept with. I shared my first convention ever. Went to Amsterdam, and I slept in a bed with him. He didn't tell me at the time that they were in Amsterdam, and I guess it's pretty common in Europe. They don't do two beds in a room like they do in America, so it was one bed, and I didn't know this, so I shared it with him for a week, and he snores, but he has been as prolific, not as, but very prolific, and I can compare the two. And I've talked to him about it here and there. He treats he treats the muse in a way of he shows up every day and he writes. And he writes whether his muse is showing up or not. He's going to do his deal. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, he gets a book either way. That's the way that he structures. Now, he's had exceptions. I know that he's had dry periods too, but for the most part, that's what he does. And that's mostly how I treat my work as well. I show up every day and let's hope inspiration strikes. Sometimes it's drier than others, but I still try and show up in the booth most every day when it's not snowing and I take my Jeep out for an adventure and I record what I'm supposed to record. How do you treat this to keep this prolific nature going? Do you wait for the muse? Do you show up every day and write regardless? How do you do it?
Yeah, I'm very lucky, John, because I started as a journalist very young, and I started on a newspaper, and you don't have the luxury of the muse. And I got used to writing with a lot of noise around me. In fact, when I went to this newspaper in Sydney, Australia, where I grew up, they stuck me in the bullpen with all the other reporters, and they made sure somebody kept ringing the phone on my desk constantly. They said, "Don't answer it." But in those days, we have these massive typewriters. We didn't have computers yet. And they made sure somebody was on the other side pounding on his typewriter as I was doing my aptitude test. And it's been really helpful over the years because I tune everything out and people think I'm deaf. But stuff can be going on around me and I'm focused. But I really treat it the same way. I get up in the morning, feed all my animals, and I write for an hour before I do anything else. But I feel like you've got to structure your day. And at any given time, I'm writing a book, editing a book, researching another one. I do a lot of research. You're doing my Mingo series. I'm so proud of that series because I hope I never run out of stories for him. But I couldn't sleep one night. Insomnia has been a problem for me all my life, but I couldn't sleep and I got up and I watched Forensic Files, which is probably not the best show to watch when you can't sleep because they're always about women who live alone with their cats getting murdered. But that's what I got up and watched. And it was a story about Lacey Peterson. Do you know who she was?
I don't.
She was a young wife in Northern California, pregnant, married, pregnant, and on Christmas Eve disappeared. And it turned out her husband killed her and their unborn son. And this particular show, he's serving life in prison for their murder, but this particular show focused on the investigation. And they interviewed a forensic accountant called Marty Laffett. I'd never heard of the guy, and he was talking about how he went into the house to investigate the financials, and the police had to let him in and go through the desk. And as he's going through the desk, he's looking for receipts and bills and insurance and tax stuff. He looks across and he sees a waste paper basket. She's been gone for a week at this point, presumed dead. But he looks in the waste paper basket and he said there was their wedding album filled with photos that the husband had put in the wastebasket, and I knew she's dead. Who throws out their wedding album? So I contacted him. And it started an amazing working relationship. I've interviewed him several times, and he's given me so much stuff to work with. So at any given time, I could be wading through research, writing, and if I didn't do it every day and structure it, I wouldn't finish anything. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but
Oh, good Lord, no. That's amazing to me. So I've got several questions I want to go off on here. First off, I'm going to address something that the crowd's asking. I've not heard of the Scott Peterson case because, unlike everyone in the crowd and you, AJ, I don't fall asleep to forensic files. I don't, and I don't watch the news. So there's that too. And I live in. You understand? I go to it. I go to a 12-step meeting. I work out. I meditate. I record in my booth, and sometimes I play in my Jeep. That's what I do. I don't watch any of this shit. But yeah. To each their own. You all. The crowd, I rant and the crowd comes back at me, but it turns out that it's really common. Women, I hate to put it that way, but I think it is true. A lot of women really get into true crime style series. They like the research that's involved. They like the forensic evidence. I honestly think that they're plotting the demise of men around them, but that's just me. I know that I'm careful on the stairs around my wife. So you have been able to get over, for lack of a better way to put it, the doldrums of repeating a process over and over again. This repeated process is I'm writing an MM romance book over and over again. And eventually, no matter how much we love what we do, you hit the doldrum period. You're like, I've run out of sexual positions to put my people in. You know, I'm drying up. You've been able to overcome that by structuring your day to be able to do different things through the course of your day. So you are editing one book that you've already finished. You're writing a book that you're still working on. You're doing research on a book that's coming up. And you kind of, I'm assuming you have like roughly 2 hours a day to do this task, and roughly two. Is that kind of how you do it? You kind of have, time frames?
Yes, and I structure everything around my dog's walking schedule. I take her out 5 times a day, so I take her out in the morning. I come back and work for 2 hours. We go for her lunchtime walk. Then I work for a few more hours. I sort of handle, I really learned this technique of not getting online as soon as I get up from very successful writers who said if you get on the internet first before you do your writing, the chances are good that you won't have a good productive day, and it's true. So I really try to do my hour first, and then I'll do the business side of things. And the business side of things, is important: paying my cover artist, commissioning covers, dealing with edits, talking to publishers. You've got to structure it away from the writing part because it can really mess with you. And I don't read reviews ever. I used to. But I get a lot of emails from new writers saying, I got this terrible review. And I just say, it doesn't mean you're not going to sell a book. And a great review does not mean that you will. I've had great reviews on books that sold 15 copies. So And then I've had terrible reviews, and the book has sold well. So reviews are for readers. I am a reader. I'll read reviews of other books I want to read, but I stay away from mine because, especially on Goodreads, it's full of trolls,
Uh-huh.
and they will just demolish you just for the sake of it. And it's not good for you as a person to read that and think, oh my God, they really hate me. I try to be positive and focus on the things that I can control, such as my word output. I don't have a word count every day, but I definitely have things I have to complete in order to get a book out in time. But a lot of authors are really good about I have to write 5,000 words or whatever. I used to do that, and it literally almost killed me. I got very, very sick.
Uh,
So I don't do that anymore. I have a life now.
that's incredible. I'm trying to get away from that myself, and I'm probably a few years behind you on my work process, but I was focusing very hard for a little while on 10 to 12 finished hours per week, and I'm finding that that is just not working for me. Occasionally, I want to have a snow day and go play and dock, and that sort of thing. I'm just now leaning into what you were saying. I think that the parallel worlds, was structuring my day in a different fashion. For one, my voice is it's a finite resource. It eventually stops working in any given day, and that if I push it too hard for a longer period of time, which is not something I want, so I can only be in the booth a certain amount of time per day before I just can't do that anymore. I've more so it's focus controlled as well. I hold myself to a particular standard for my work, and if I lose focus in the booth, I don't sound as good. It's just not as good of a product. So, yeah, four
Well,
to six
I've never
hours.
heard you lose focus, honestly. You're such a joy to listen to. I came to listen to you doing my book as you started with Bonded, the Mingo McLeod book 3. And I
Hmm.
know you're going to go back now and do all the others, but you were having fun. And then I heard you doing Patty's book, and I've heard you do a couple of other authors. There's such joy in what you do, but you're also so prepared. And I just don't think readers or listeners realize how much work you put into it. I've worked with a couple of narrators now, and you are the first one that sent me a list of words that you weren't sure about pronunciation because the words were all Hawaiian.
Hmm.
Most of them you had right, but it was an audio list. And I sat there listening to it thinking, this is unbelievable. You are so prepared. And Tracy's great because she sits there reading along with you and she'll say, no, John. But it's fun because you stop and you laugh. And I never get the feeling that you're mad at yourself or frustrated. So please don't ever lose that joy. I never get a sense that you will, but it's so refreshing. And as an author, to hear someone narrating your book with such love is really a pleasure.
Well, first off, thank you. I don't deserve 90% of what you just said, and but I have been taught. My best friend taught me this, that when somebody compliments you, the best way to do this is to say thank you. So I did that. Two, this is not me. I'm a very small part of this. It's a team of people. For instance, my lovely wife Jody did all the pre-reads on your book. So
Which is amazing. Tell her thank you.
yeah, no, she's awesome. Sometimes she cooks me dinner too. It's freaking fantastic. But she's like
I have
this.
to tell you though, when you told me in our offstage chat that your wife pre-read the book, when I wrote the first Mingo McLeod book, I was really excited that it sold really well. It was a departure for my readers from my usual books because Phantom Lover, which is a 17 book series, is all paranormal fantasy and a lot of sex.
Hmm.
But Marty Laffer called me out of the blue. He said, hey, what happened to our forensic accountant book? What happened to her? I said, well, Marty, she's now a gay man living in Honolulu, and the book came out. It's called Wanted. I can send you a copy. And he said, wow, great. My wife wants to read your book.
Hmm.
I said, well, it has a lot of sex in it, gay sex. And he said, I'm sure she'll love it. And I was really, I was really nervous about sending it to him, but he never asked to read any of the other books, so I'm not quite sure what they thought.
That's how you know.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
sure she was like, oh. I said, look, the first sex scene is on page 1, so be aware of that.
well, with the team, Jody was doing all of those initially, and then Jody, my lovely wife, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. And everybody knows this in the crowd. It was about 3 or 4 years ago
Sorry.
now. Oh, it's all
Is
right.
she
And
okay?
she full recovery. It was wonderful. And she's a strong woman. I married up. She had to take some time off at that point. There were treatments involved and all that fun stuff, and she just couldn't do. She was easily half or more of our company at the time, and she couldn't do it anymore. So she stepped down, and I tried my best to do everything for a little while. And at the time, we started as a production company. So we started with not just me at all. In fact, I was a very small part of the acting part of it. We hired other actors to come in. I would book the gigs. And we would do all the post-production. People would come in here. This is before everybody had their own booths at their house. So they would come here to record. We would do like Trace does now in Discord, live proofing of it. We would have a producer on the other side of the glass, me or Jody or somebody else that we hired, and they would be in the booth, and we'd do it that way. So I tried to handle all of that on my own. Plus, I was just getting a name as John Solo as well as an actor. So I had a full-time job in the booth myself, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it all. I failed miserably, and we almost lost the business as a result. We slowed down. We stopped hiring other actors entirely at that point. I realized that the John Solo name is starting to gain some momentum. I make more money doing that than I do hiring other actors out. Let's back off the other actors. Let's finish out what we got and be done with that. We kind of closed Falcon Sound Company's doors. We're still open, but it's just me, which allowed me to just barely keep my head above water for a while, doing all my own pre-reads and just handling the John Solo stuff. In comes Trace. At the same time that Jody was just kind of working her way back into the business, but she couldn't really do it full time. She started handling some of the pre-reads. And then Trace stepped in, and Trace has done a wonderful job of stepping into that
She's
aspect
great.
of it. Yeah. And you can't find, I'm lucky enough to have married the first one that I found. The second one at least allowed me to hire her. You can't, it's very hard to find that particular set of skills. And here's the most important thing, to be able to put up with me, because you've watched a couple live sessions now. Trace will correct me in a live session, and I will make fun of her for it. And she just laughs it off. It's just like water off a duck's back. It's amazing.
But it's really fun to listen to. That's what I was saying to you. I never get the feeling that there's any tension. There's
No,
a couple of narrators I know that get very upset over everything. So it's really cool that
I've seen
you
that.
don't.
The forensic accountant in real life calling you, and then he asks for one book, and then he hasn't asked for another. We'll put it that way. We did not set out in life to narrate gay romance books. It wasn't like, this is what I'm going to do when I grow up. It wasn't like that. We stumbled into it. And at some point, not only am I not gay, my wife is obviously not gay either. And we're spending our day
Neither
full
am I.
time. And a lot of the books we did early on were all sex. Are you familiar with Siren, that publishing company?
Yes, they did a lot of paranormals and a lot of sex.
We did a lot of that early on. We jokingly said that at some point, as we're doing upgrades to the studio and the house, because we were making pretty good money, we're going to put a sign out front that said, "This is the house that porn built," because
Right.
that's how it felt. Now, at this point, I can kind of choose what I do. I'm really lucky in my career that I don't have to take on everything that comes across my desk anymore. So this year, I'm actually choosing to do a bit more of the sex stuff because it turns out sex fucking sells. But I get to choose when I do it and how I do it. It's on my terms now. It's a little bit different.
And that's important.
It really is.
Have you ever turned down a book because you just thought, oh, it's horrible?
I turned
You
down
have?
still at this point, and I'm not telling tales here. I probably turn down, I don't know, 2 or 3 projects a month, somewhere in there. And I work typically 5 projects a month. So yeah, and I try my best to be a problem solver. So if I don't like something, it might be for multiple reasons. It might be that I think it's poorly written, poorly edited. Poorly edited is a big deal to me. But oftentimes too, it's just, I don't vibe with it. It's not really, I'm not feeling it. So I try and at least point them in the right direction of, I can't do this, but you might want to talk to X, Y, or Z. And I try and give them names of people that I think might be right for it at least. Because I don't want to leave them empty. They came to me to solve a problem. They want an audiobook, and I'm an audiobook narrator. So I try and at least tell them who I think can do it. And that also, it kind of helps the community, which is a good thing for me. And there's more than enough work. And there's a very select few people that can do what I do. There's maybe 100 of us out there that work in this genre at a pro level. And I don't know, 100's maybe being generous. So, and there's, Alyssa and I have been doing the show Ramblin' Gremlin, where there's like in between 10 and 20 audiobook releases a week in the genre. You do the math, there's a ton of work. There really is. It's an amazing.
I didn't know that many were coming out. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't either until very recently. If you would have asked me to guess, I would have said 3 or 4 books a week. That would have been my guess, somewhere in there. But no, 15 to 20. We've been doing the show, The Ramblin' Gremlin, where Lissa goes and gets a list of all the new releases every week. And we do a show where I pop up a graphic of each new release, and she reads the stats from it, and I make fun of her. That's the show. It's really fun.
You've got to, when we finish this, you have to give me the link so I can come and listen to it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I will. We put it up in the group every week, and then it's on YouTube. So you go over to YouTube. I'll share where it is. It's a lot of fun, but I didn't know. I had no idea. 15 or 20, and surprisingly, I know probably 90% of the narrators that are popping in there. But occasionally there's a new one. Last week there was a guy named Ken B. Erotic. Now, what were his parents thinking when they named him that? They had to know that he was going to be a narrator. anyways, sorry. You have been like a super fun guest. I don't.
Thank you so much.
No, I don't do this every time, but you are more than welcome to come back anytime. As you know, we haven't really talked about
Thank you.
promoting the books or anything like that. But are you working on anything currently that you can tell everybody about?
Yes, I'm working on a book right now called Both Sides Now, and it's a gender bender romantic mystery about a woman who wakes up one morning as a man, the man she's been dating, a big, handsome black man. And she has no idea how it happened. I've had so much fun with it.
That's fantastic.
So you're going to be narrating that one too, I hope. But so I'm working on that, and I mentioned that I just got 17 books back from a publisher that hadn't paid us for 3 years, and so these books have been out there. So I'm republishing. The series is called Orgasmic Texas Dawn. So they're going to be re-edited and new covers, and I'm going to publish them. They're books I wrote with DJ Manley. And DJ, who's probably my best friend in the world, we've written many books together, but she got breast cancer. And she's doing better, but it metastasized to her bones. So she's been in no shape to write. So I really want these books to come out. So she's got money. I mean, she's going to get anything that we get for these books. So I really feel for you with Jodie and her fight. It's very, very hard to watch somebody you love dealing with cancer. So many people. Every time I turn around, somebody else has it. I can't. My mother died of cancer. It's so hard. I'm so glad Jodie's okay.
Oh, she's, it turns out, and I'm not trying to be crass here, but she's not that easy to kill, AJ. She, she's a tough bro. She's tough, man.
That's a good thing.
Well, so a couple things here. One, I know that you're in our Facebook group. I've missed a ton of comments because I've been focused on our conversation. If you could at some point come in and respond to these, that'd be awesome.
I will. I'm sorry. I was focused on you too, so I wasn't typing.
It happens every week. Secondly, we're posting this up on YouTube as well, so the YouTube link will be up in the next day or two. I'll message you with that, and then if you want to put it in your group or newsletter anywhere else, that'd be fantastic. And finally, this is the easiest part of the show, and if I do this right, I'm not going to mess this up. All you have to do is wave to the camera as we go out here. There we go.
Thank you, John.